Hey friends, Pastor Michael from Organic Church, here with Sydney Erickson, Don Reed, Beth Jarvis, Nick Offolter, and Pastor Roger Deerdorf. Okay, I think that works now.
You sure?
Yeah.
I was talking to Dale at the
Dale Walker.
Dale.
Friday. Was it last Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Friday.
Yes.
Yeah, and he said we were on topic a few weeks back and was very proud of us. I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
So good for us.
But he brought up another good conversation that we could.
Ooh.
It was different. Oh gosh, Christianity. The different.
Should have wrote it down.
Not branches. What am I thinking?
Denomination.
Yes.
Oh, that would be
I'm
fun.
like, that's a good one.
The other thing that we should consider doing is we should phone up Rhonda and put her through. We've never had a guest caller and have her talk because she teaches 6th grade at Dover.
Oh.
And she said she teaches about the major religions like that. She really enjoys it because she can teach about all of the major religions.
Yeah.
That would be a fun conversation to
Yes.
have.
Yeah.
Of course, she would probably say, no, I don't want to do that. But I think we can get her to do it.
Well, and Dale.
Drag her in here.
Yeah. Well, we don't have enough microphones to drag her in. So we would.
That's true. That's what I said
Yeah.
to Dale. Like,
Set up the other. That won't work.
Well, I don't have enough inputs on the board to bring another one in. I might be able to make it work. I could potentially make it work.
I know.
It'd be
you
more
can.
bougie,
Should
though,
be
to
a
have an
deterrent.
in-phone call.
Wouldn't that be like
Yeah.
we've never done that? We've never done
we
that.
should do it with Dale first because I was like, it was your idea.
Yeah.
You know,
That would be
That's-
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
So.
Speaking of Rhonda,
Hopefully, I'm going to have breakfast with him this Saturday. We'll see.
Okay.
you can put in a good word with her to put in a good word for you at the post office because her brother-in-law's postman.
Oh,
Chuck.
There's
Chuck.
your
Chuck.
connection.
I'm just going to walk in and be like, Chuck, buddy.
What's up, Chuck? No, you are in great hands because you don't find many postmasters like Chuck. Like any office I go to, they're like, man, Janayton has Chuck. They're so lucky. And Alicia's just as great.
I think Alicia's the one I talked to when I
Yeah.
called. I will tell you this. I have never, so I don't like to call the 800 number
Yeah,
because
yeah,
then
yeah.
they direct you to the post office, but it's never the post office. It's somebody else.
Right.
And then eventually they send you there.
Yeah.
So there's a backdoor website where you can find the post office's direct number.
Mm-hmm. The
And
254 number.
Yeah. So I called that, and I think that was who answered the
Yeah.
phone. She was sweet from the moment she answered the phone to the moment
always
we hung
is.
up.
Yeah.
She wasn't like, post office.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? She was super kind.
She's not like that.
Yeah.
Not at all.
But I
I
called
carry my stuff to the car the other day.
Oh.
I called Delroy
Okay.
because they have mailboxes out behind their building. And you guys know that when something pops into my mind, I always want to go big, right?
Yeah.
And I had decided I want to do a letters from Santa campaign at one of our hotels, and I wanted a real post office box, a real mailbox
Oh, yeah.
that we could paint red and put letters to Santa on and whatnot. And I was like, if I could get a real one, that would be ideal. So I called, and they're like, well, I can't sell it to you, but if you call Sheridsville,
Yeah, because they're like
like
the same.
yeah.
It's weird.
she asked.
Marsha. Talk to Marsha.
Yep, talk to Marsha. Asked to talk to the postmaster. She should be able to help you. I don't know if she can sell it to you, but she should be able to help you. Marsha was fantastic. She's like the only one you have to call like Akron or Canton because they scrap them. And my brain didn't think about this. They won't give you one blue because then if you post it on a street corner and people drop mail in it, you steal their mail, right? Like I never thought about that, but she was like, they probably won't sell you one, but you can try.
Yeah.
I called that number.
Oh.
They were not nice. Like just rude from the time they took the call because I was an inconvenience to them. So, but anyhow.
Yeah, they had to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're I feel like anytime like Canton and above, it's basically more corporate and plants and a ton. It's just you get
Yes,
nowhere.
exactly.
Yes, you
exactly.
get nowhere with them.
Maybe
Like-
we get Tyler to get one.
Oh, geez, don't do that. Tyler unbolt one from in front of the post office and walk away with it. Be like, Tyler, that had people's mail in it. Nuh-uh.
Well, especially the election mail.
Yeah, stealing all the ballots.
Yeah.
Hey, did you guys see the guy that set the ballot box on fire?
I
Heard
did.
about it, yeah.
Nuts, right? Nuts. You just can't imagine that
Where
stuff.
was that at?
I don't know where it was. I just saw it in
Oregon?
the news.
Is it
Somewhere out west.
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got arrested. That's not going to end well for him.
No.
That's not going to end well
That's
at
a
all.
federal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. That's not going to end well at all.
Which to that, like, I mean, if it was a normal, but it wasn't.
It wasn't a normal
metal
mailbox.
blue one,
So,
was
like,
it?
if you go up to the post or to the in-person voting place in Philly, the courthouse,
Yeah.
they have a box outside that you can drop your ballot in. If you don't
Yeah.
want to mail it in, like if you want to
Yeah.
physically drop it off, you can put it in that box after hours.
It's like a different one than
Yes.
the blue
Yes.
one.
Yes, it's not a mailbox at all. It's like a security box,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
It looks like a mailbox, but it's
Yeah.
Not technically.
So-
Hey, I wonder if I could get one of those.
Yeah,
Maybe.
there you go.
I wonder where they get those.
Tyler.
I'll just go and bolt that one, but I'll wait till after the election to do it.
You could ask my dad to see if he could weld one for you.
Well, my problem is though, is I need it like yesterday
Now,
in
yeah.
order to put it up and to start collecting
Yeah.
letters, but it's whatever.
Yep.
It's whatever.
Good idea.
I know.
Short on.
Good idea, short on time. Everything I do.
Yeah.
And then I won't remember it next year. Like that was an epiphany. That's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. If I don't take action today, it's over.
Like
So-
Al Bundy. One in, one out, huh?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You know, with Chuck and them down there at the post office, they
She says to
they
get back to
get
it.
back to it. Get back to the post office deal. Let's see. He's like, I go in and get my packages, and he's like, you can take the mail today. I'm like, no.
She's like, her
like-
husband doesn't know that she
he's
comes
like-
in all the time.
Yeah.
You got shoes coming? I'm like, yep.
Yeah. I wish we had a mailbox here
Oh, yeah.
because I buy a lot of stuff
Wait.
for the church.
I bet you could
I could-
contact the Yorksville post office and see, because
Well,
there
but-
is a route that
I know,
crosses
but
here. But then
I'm not here every day to collect it
there's-
every day.
There's certain mailboxes you can put a lock on.
Did you not hear me say that I had a 6-foot package delivered?
Just saying.
They ain't putting that in the mailbox.
If
Sid.
there's a small package.
I have never bought anything for the church that has come in a small
Nothing-
package
nothing
Yeah, that's
comes
true.
Small.
That's very true.
It's either big.
or really big.
Yeah.
I bought cables for the new stage project the other day.
There's two.
No, it was 4 huge boxes. I was like, why did they ship it like that? But they did. So whatever. Amazon doesn't have a care. It's boxes. They don't care. I one time ordered something that came in a box that was probably 4 feet wide, about 6 feet tall.
Uh-huh.
The item was
package
pancake
parts.
flat.
Mhm.
It was that painting guard that I bought. So it's only a foot wide. Like there was no reason for the box to be that big. But no,
Have
whatever.
you seen the new boxes that are like the thick cardboard?
Yes, I like those.
Okay, so I ordered Cooper a sippy cup. I mean, the sippy cup's like
Yeah,
this big.
yeah.
It's tiny. And they send it in one of those stupid boxes. I'm like, what did I order that's in there?
Uh-huh.
I figured it would have been a paper bag that they
Yeah.
always... I'm like, you made my carrier.
Yep.
Just
They had to
make
bring it to the porch
Yeah.
rather than just put it in the post or in the mailbox.
Yeah.
I agree.
They're like the real stiff bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
real thick cardboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, what did I order?
Yeah.
It was bizarre. They must have been running out of packaging or something.
Yeah, or somebody was bored because there's no
Yeah.
consistency.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes I get stuff like, I'll tell you, we order wind chimes and candles, memory candles
Mhm.
for the church that we give away
Oh,
for
yeah.
bereavement. And sometimes the wind chimes come boxed. Sometimes they come unboxed, but with the stickers on the box. So then you can't reuse the gift box that it comes with because they put a sticker on it.
Yeah.
You son of a guns.
It's annoying.
Just never know. It's not consistent. I ordered 4 of them. All 4 came. 3 of them were in boxes, separate boxes, 3 of them. One of them was not and had the sticker on the box. Why? Why would you do that?
Get some goo gone.
No, it's a waste. It's gone. Yeah, it's a loss. It's a loss.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty.
So this is not like a topic that we've got written down. This is a conversation that I want to have, and it's actually specifically about conversations. I was listening to a podcast with Dax Shepard,
Mhm.
and he was interviewing somebody, and they were talking about the societal breakdowns, basically, and the ideas of conversations don't happen anymore. Everything is an argument.
Mhm.
So it was more about democracy than anything else. So just thinking logically, when you talk about being able to have a conversation with somebody, they say that democracy never really existed on a large scale prior to television and widely circulated newspapers. So
Propaganda.
no, not necessarily. So like when remember back in the day, well, most of us don't, but I'm not going to say it, Roger. He looked at me. He's like, you're going to say it. But when they had their own movie theater, when they had their own, like everything was kind of, you didn't travel much beyond.
travel
Sense
very
of
far.
community.
Right. There was a sense of community.
Uh-huh.
When somebody didn't agree with something, they would come together at town hall. They would debate it. They would make a decision on it. And if you didn't like the decision,
Off.
the majority ruled, and you just learned to live with it. Right.
Mhm.
Okay. In comes social media, in comes newspapers and television. Now, when somebody does something that we don't like, we don't feel like our voice is heard because it's not a small gathering of people that can sit down and talk.
Right.
Yeah.
So instead, we argue online, or we, feel like we've got to fist fight these people, whatever, in order for our opinion to be valid. And I always say, the louder I am, the righter I am. Right?
Right.
Like that's how people feel.
Yes.
If I can shout my opinion louder than you can shout yours, whatever megaphone, bullhorn, whatever I've got,
I can hear then.
then
Right.
yeah, then Roger might actually hear me. Then I'm right and you are wrong.
Right.
Right. So we've talked about Congress in the past that when they used to come together, they would have duels on
Sure.
on the floor of Congress because like you're bringing everybody together to have these conversations. So what is the breakdown between the church and society in being able to have a conversation about who Jesus is and what Jesus has done? That was a long wrap into that question.
Because society doesn't want to hear it. Most people.
Do you believe that?
Society is moving in a direction where, I'm sorry to say this, but there is freedom with the absence of God.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
There is more freedom to be had if we don't recognize God, if we don't have that conversation, then more of our civil liberties and more of the rights that we want to have it's more accessible. It's easier for us to live that life.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And so we don't have to have that conversation. And, because I see in this current election, I think it's forcing a lot of people to choose sides.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And although nobody's particularly talking about God in this election, they're not mentioning his name, but you can tell that wherever you stand on the issues, it is making you choose a side.
Mm-hmm.
I'll point something out. I've seen some interviews with, I'll bring up Stevie Nicks. I've always loved her music. I always loved Fleetwood Mac. I've always loved that music.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be very hard for me not to listen to that old music. Now, my wife, when she found out that Stevie Nicks, she had an abortion, maybe more than one in the 70s, 80s. And her reasoning was because if she had that baby, Fleetwood Mac would not have survived because she wouldn't have been able to carry on. And she said, I would never have a nanny raise my baby. I would never put my child in that situation. So I had to make the decision. Do I stay in the band and do what I'd always dreamed of doing, or do I have this child? So she chose not to have the child, which, okay, fine. That's, she's made her decision. But fast forwarding all these years later, now, of course, she's really on that side of, women having total right to do with their bodies and abortion should be legal. She's firmly on that side of the fence. And I saw an interview with her because a lot of people, the first thing she says was, one of her big quotes was, I believe in the Church of Stevie. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's not good.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so for all your fame and all your wealth and all your success, you're not thanking God at all for that. So, and then secondly,
I've got so many notes over here.
I'll keep rolling. Secondly, I saw an interview where somebody was asking her, what are you most grateful for, for your life, your career? And she said, she held up her hand and she's like, I'm grateful for all these rings. And she had all these beautiful rings on her hand.
Jewelry and whatnot.
And she says, I'm grateful for these boots. She's like, I'm grateful for the crazy life I got to live. And I'm thinking, well, you can't take any of that with you when you go. So I'm thinking, ooh, and a lot of people, and of course, I had to read the comments, and you wouldn't believe how many people were like, yeah, I believe in the Church of Stevie because they love Stevie Nicks and they love Fleetwood Mac, which I do too. But there's no way that at that point I would say, I'm following the Church of Stevie. I'm looking at Stevie like, oh, that's really unfortunate.
I mean, can you imagine?
sad.
It's really unfortunate.
Even with her saying that, I guarantee you there's going to be so many write-ins.
Yeah. But of course, a lot of comments were, I feel sorry for you, Stevie, because God comes first and you should be thanking God for all your success and all those things. So I saw both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
But we see this a lot where you have celebrities who really pull people into a certain ideal.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the only reason that person is going to vote for one party or another because they follow Taylor Swift.
I mean,
Shake it off. Shake it off.
I just saw that. Yeah.
So, like I said, I see this more to where in this election is forcing people to choose sides. because of what's going on in our country.
Well, Kamala's.
Said or unsaid, I think it is.
Do you remember offhand what her slogan was? Choose a side, not a party, I believe. Can you
don't.
pull it up?
Yeah.
It might still.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Was it her campaign slogan?
It's one of the campaign slogans that I heard. I know I saw it on a video, but I think I saw it like even on a social media post or something. It's basically like
No, her campaign promises, or her campaign slogan is, when we fight, we win.
it's like not choosing a party, choosing a side. I can't remember. Must not have been important. But I mean, for what I was saying, I feel like this election more than anything is kind of like that. You know, like the most. It seems like people aren't really. They weren't really voting based on their past party. I mean, there's been.
Oh yeah, I agree with you.
There's been
I agree
times
with
that's
you.
happened.
I agree with you.
But I think a lot of people really were talking about it based on like the early voters. You know, they were, I voted for Donald Trump in 2016, but
I'm not voting for him this year.
yes,
Whatever.
Yes.
Okay,
Think
so
this year more
that's
than
my
anything.
first note.
Mhm.
The problem is with the system. We have developed a two-party system, and that's the only way that it
Yes.
works, right? You have a Democrat run and a Republican run, and you put an independent, Ross Perot, in the mix, and all he does is split the votes.
Right.
Like,
Here,
Right.
what I
And
found
it's a
just
wasted.
shameful to me
Mhm.
is that when we went to vote today, I recognized two candidates,
Mhm.
Kamala Harris
Mhm.
and Donald Trump.
Yep.
I think there was at least 6 other
Mhm.
tickets
Mm-hmm.
on that ballot, but I never heard
Never heard
any
any
of
of
them.
Never heard of them.
And I'm thinking, if they're on the ballot in the United States,
We should-
and they were able to get on the ballot, they should have been in the debate.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say. So
Nope.
remember Weed Guy in the 2016 election? What was his name? It was the Clinton-Trump election. There was the one guy that smoked weed.
Oh,
He was the independent.
Yes,
They would not let him on the debate. So what he did was he did his own. Like when they answered the question, he was on a live stream and he would answer the same question. Now, my thing is, it doesn't make sense that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Because he should have been a viable candidate.
Mhm.
If he had enough strength to make it to that point, he should have been a viable candidate.
Absolutely.
Right? And it doesn't make sense that we've created a 3-party or a 2-party system.
yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to stay in the politics for too long because
Right.
there's so much more to cover.
Yeah.
But that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's where the real problem is at.
Definitely.
Okay. So now to touch on another point, I want to think back to Old Yerkesville again. Movie theater, cobblestone roads. They've got their own stables, like old school Yerkesville.
Well, the post office used to be the Opera House.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was the Opera House.
Yeah.
Huh.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Okay, you said something that there's more freedom in the world. And so I wrote this thought down that back when you had Old Yerkesville, freedom was found in Jesus.
Mhm.
Like everybody went to church and you had more freedom if you were saved because you didn't have to worry about hell, death, or the grave, right?
Mhm.
Now there is more freedom in the world because Jesus really doesn't have a place in the rest of the world.
Mhm.
So it's not like your neighbors are going to church and you're all attending church on Sunday morning. It's not like, I mean, I would guess, didn't live in this time, but even the guys who were at the bar on Saturday night were at church on Sunday morning, the winos, the alcoholics,
Yes.
because they knew they had a connection there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think of, Andy Griffith. What was the drunk's name? Otis.
Otis.
Otis is always, he just put himself in jail, shut the door, locked the door, and he'd let himself out when it was
Yeah.
time to get out. He knew, like he knew the difference between right and wrong. The problem is we've gotten to the point where we don't care about right and wrong anymore.
Right.
Because what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong.
Well, and the majority of it's now flip flopped. Back in like the old days that you were just talking about, the majority went to church. Well, now the majority does not go to church.
And I don't
So,
believe that.
you
I don't believe that. I do believe that they're not attending physically like we're used to. But they are still finding church online. They're still finding church through
Yeah.
like small groups.
Yeah.
It's not your typical Sunday attendance, which is changing the way that we look at church.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people are still invested in a relationship with Christ, but we don't see it. What happens when we don't see it?
Yeah.
That network of people that you would normally have, you don't have anymore.
Mhm.
When you attend church online, and I'm not picking on New Point. New Point's a big church. Like they've got lots of, when you only ever attend online at New Point and you give online at New Point, there's no connection with the
Right.
rest of that body.
Right.
So what happens is I'm making myself feel good by giving and watching. But what have I learned? And again, not picking on New Point, and I'm not saying that they do this, but those larger churches, the churches with more attendance, they're the ones who are prosperity gospel churches.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are saying, like, just ask God and he will give it to you. Just ask God. No, that's not how that works. He is going to give you whatever whatever he deems you need.
Right.
He is not giving you what you want. He's giving you what you need.
Yeah,
Sometimes they line up. That's wonderful. Yeah. Those are celebrations. But listen, did I want to buy a house in Janayton? No, under no uncertain. To me, it's a third world country. When I can't get a package delivered to my house, it is
Get your groceries before you go.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like I said to my wife, I can't get my groceries delivered to my house anymore. What kind of third world country am I moving to?
But listen, you want to know something bizarre? So we're 10.1 miles away. I think I've talked about this, and I can't get my groceries delivered. But
Your grandma.
my grandma. Okay, so that whole thing. So she's like 2 or 3 blocks down her old house. I could have gotten them delivered to her house, and I have done that before. But now that she's not there, But I got on there today, and there's this like little walker thing that looks like a Ford Bronco Sport.
Oh yeah.
So I got it for Cooper. I ordered it today.
And it came today.
Today.
Because
So
they
why
delivered it from the store.
Yes. So why can you deliver a toy, but you can't deliver my groceries
Correct.
on the same day?
They still shop and deliver. It doesn't make any sense.
That's insane.
All right. Next point that you listen, I got all the notes, man. Next point that you made was about Roger, careful, I might poke your eye out with my pen.
Go ahead. I don't care.
That's how I learned how to speak. Actually, that's not true. That's how Bill Clinton learned how to speak without pointing. They put a pen in his hand and he would shake the pen, and then eventually they remove the pen. And if you watch, he speaks like this with his thumb out because he's holding the pen. Right? So that's how, if you watch me when I preach, that's typically how I preach too. I don't know why that
Bob Dole actually held the pen.
I don't know why that ever, did he?
Remember, because Bob Dole had the hand.
Bob Dole's chair.
Yeah, I think his hand was somewhat crippled.
Oh,
So he
gotcha.
keep the pen in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I didn't realize that.
So
So
the Saturday Night Live memory.
it's Bob Dole.
Yeah.
Bob Dole's chair. Bob Dole. You said that she chose to get abortions because she had to decide whether or not that, and she felt like she should have the freedom to do with whatever with her body, and that the world believes that. Can I be honest with you? I also believe that for women, because I don't feel like I can make that decision. Now, I am pro-life. I will tell you that I am, generally speaking, pro-life. I don't believe abortions as a form of birth control are acceptable.
Right.
Right? I believe that there should be exceptions.
There
The
is
life of the
exceptions.
mother,
Absolutely.
rape, incest, all of those things.
That's
I believe
where I
that
stand.
I believe that
Yeah.
there should be exceptions. Now, I will tell you, like with the birth of Emmett, I would not have known what to do with myself if I had to make a decision whether my
Sure,
baby was going to
yeah.
live or my wife was going to live. I don't.
Yeah.
I am thankful that I didn't have to make that decision
Yeah.
that day, but I can't imagine if I would have. Right. So I'm not going to blame anybody for that.
Right.
And so, if she is having an abortion for the sake of like birth control, shame on her. However, I'm going to give a real unpopular opinion at this table, and maybe generally speaking. Do you know how easy it is for a man to have a vasectomy?
Yeah.
And do you know how easy it is to reverse it?
Right. Yeah.
Why
exactly.
would every man who does not want to have a baby not have a vasectomy?
And it's actually pretty cheap. Like
I had it done without insurance.
I looked into it
Yeah.
because with the insurance and everything, and you
Yeah.
showed me about the one, and I'm like, this is going to be outrageous because it said that they don't cover it.
Yeah.
And I looked up the prices. I'm like, oh, but if you get your tubes tied
Yes.
as a woman, it is literally like quadruple.
And it's not reversible. I don't know if that's true, nurses.
It depends on whether they're
Cut
cut
and tied.
cut,
Okay.
burned.
Okay.
Yes.
So here's from my experience. I had a vasectomy, but I didn't get it until after the 5th child because I couldn't figure out what was producing the kids. It took me 5 to figure it out. Finally, somebody's like, hey, you could stop that. Actually, funny story. I was supposed to have it after Easton. Like we had decided, like, we don't want any more. I'm going to get a vasectomy. Easier for me. Alyssa is 7 years younger than me. If I were to die and she were to want more children with a future husband, whatever, I'll haunt them, by the way. No, I'm kidding. If that were to happen and she were to want additional children, and it's easier on me than it is on her. So we decided we were going to do it. Was 2 days before the procedure. They call me and they're like, hey, something's not right with your insurance. We can't do this. Like we can't have you come in. I was like, well, crap. Well, in that meantime, she got pregnant with Adeline. But that was God's way of making sure I got my princess, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
But I believe that because let's be honest, men mature much later than women do.
Mhm.
Like women at a younger age are much more mature. I still think there are a lot of young women right now making dumb decisions in their lives. And I think that's getting worse.
Yeah.
But if I would have known that when I was in my first relationship, and all of my kids are a blessing, don't get me wrong, but I probably would have had that done because I wasn't ready for kids.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't responsible enough to have kids. If that procedure was as easy to get as birth control is,
Right.
do you know how much, like,
Mhm.
if I told a 21-year-old guy, hey, you can go get a vasectomy and it's covered, why wouldn't you do it?
Mhm.
It doesn't make you any less of a man.
That's right.
Everything's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, okay, so that's an unpopular opinion.
Honestly, I'm afraid to do it.
Why?
I don't know. So it's God's will if Margie and I.
Listen, it is the most
don't know.
it is the most
Yeah.
simple procedure I've ever done. We're not going to get into great detail, but basically, they make the appointment.
Can I ask it? Were you put to sleep?
No.
My friend is
Okay, thank you very much.
Holy smokes. You talk a wild experience.
So my
Oh.
friends, they don't want kids, the one
Mhm.
that I talk about all the time, but she's like 34 and they had like a scare and she's like, make that appointment.
Yeah.
But she's like, you're not getting put to sleep. It's more expensive. And he's like,
They didn't give me an option. So they said it's local anesthesia. You go in, you put your little gown on. Now, mind you, this is an office. The room that I went into was literally right off the waiting room. Like right off the way. There was no privacy. It didn't feel like
They hand you a bag of frozen peas.
that's kind of what it felt like. So it felt like you know how well, maybe you don't know how, but they put a bull in the chute when they castrate it. That's kind of what it felt like. Like I went in the chute and now like all of a sudden it's happening.
At least they didn't put a rubber band around.
Well, that's kind of what it felt like at first. So it's one of those regular like exam tables that you
Yeah.
go like you go to the pediatric
Yeah.
doctor and they've got those sitting there. I sit down and he puts a little footrest down. He's like, all right, go ahead and lay down. I lay down. He's like, all right, this is gonna feel cold. So he gives me a shot. And I don't know where he put the shot, but it numbed everything. And he's like, all right, we're gonna get started. Just relax. And I lay there and you feel them like you can feel them moving, but you don't know what they're doing at all. He's like, I couldn't have been 15 minutes. He's like, all right, you're done. He's like, sit up slow because the anesthesia will rush to your head when you sit up.
Yeah.
So just take your time. So I sit up, not slowly. I sit up and man, I'm like, and the lady comes in with she's like, go ahead and put your shorts on, get dressed, move on because we got another one coming in. Like, right. It's like,
We got to flip.
right, we got to flip the room, buddy. You got to get out. And so I'm staggering. I am so like the anesthesia has got me like I'm bumping into walls and stuff. I get to the lobby and Alyssa's supposed to be waiting on me to drive me home. She's nowhere to be found. I'm starting to panic. I'm calling her. She crossed the hallway to go to the bathroom. I'm freaking out because I can't stand up straight. So she finally comes out. And I'm like, I can't walk. Like, I'm going to throw up. Like, I can't. This is like, I'm bumping into the walls and stuff. So there was a Subway in the hospital. She's like, let's just stop and grab a sandwich. Like, hopefully that'll give you time for it to wear off. And it did.
Huh.
And I went to work the next day.
Huh.
No, I mean, bag of peas, don't get me wrong. Like, I sat all day, but I went to work the next day and I was fine. I did have a little bit of trouble later on. I called my doctor and he's like, just go soak in the tub and you'll be fine. 20 minutes, man. It was good as gold. It was wild. It's freaking wild. Yeah. So it's not hard. It's not hard to do. And
There you go, Nick.
That was not a good sell.
that was just my experience. Though.
Oh.
Maybe you'll get a better doctor. I don't know. And
Before you move on from that note,
yes,
What note?
yeah,
I've still got more.
you got more. Talking about this women,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and their right to their body and
Mhm.
everything. If I offend anybody, I'm sorry. But
Women are dumb. They shouldn't be able to think for
No.
themselves.
the main issue for me really is when they're talking about, I tell Margie all the time, I say, you know, the way these women talk, their slogan should say women before God,
Mm-hmm.
because they talk so much about their right to their own bodies that nothing else matters.
Yes.
And again, they're not bringing God into the conversation at all. And maybe if they did and could like
Or even say,
convince me that like their reasoning with their relationship with God
Yeah.
and how he fits into their ideals, then you might be able to get me to listen. But my ears close more and more when all I hear is this
me.
me, you know,
Yeah.
women should have all the power. We should be able to do whatever we want to our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, politically, you know, we can't make it simple. Like you said, there's going to be circumstances
Yeah.
medically.
Yeah.
It cannot be
Where
black and
people
white.
have to
Nothing
make
can be black and white.
No.
But of course, we can't make it simple in
No.
Congress.
Right.
Right.
We have to
No.
make the bill so complicated
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
that, you know,
And attach farm aid to
they're
the end of
making-
it.
They're making women afraid. Like, I forget who said it, but it was almost like they said, at some point, you know, the government could be forcing us women to have babies. If we don't have power and
Yeah.
control over our own bodies, at
Yeah.
some point, we could be forced to have babies. And I thought, oh boy.
And I get how they can see that because we people are scared into thinking that.
Right.
I don't think the church wants that, generally speaking.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
My
No.
mom had a pregnancy in the 70s, and the doctor told her this is not going to end up being a viable
Yeah.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
This baby is going to have all kinds of complications.
Mm-hmm.
And for you we need to abort this baby.
Mhm.
Well, they struggled with that decision,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
very much so. But so they went with the doctor's advice to go ahead and terminate that pregnancy. My mom struggled with that all of her life.
Mhm.
And to think of women who have 2, 3, 4,
Mhm.
5
Yeah.
abortions just as
With
birth
no
control,
regrets.
Just
with
as-
no,
yeah.
Yeah.
no regrets.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
have another one.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
get pregnant again.
Right.
And
Yeah.
have another.
I knew a girl in high school who used abortion as a form of birth control. Rather than
I did too. She
get on the pill or rather than use condoms,
Uh-huh.
she would just go out and have unprotected sex, get pregnant. Her mom would take her to the abortion clinic. They'd have an abortion and she'd go out and be pregnant again in 3 or 4 weeks.
But really, I mean, mentally, what has that done
I
to
know.
these women?
I know.
My mom struggled with that
Yep.
all of her life.
But they're different society though.
Yeah.
So you're talking old school versus new school. New school is like, well, that didn't matter anyway. It wasn't a baby. Like I wasn't able to hold it. It didn't matter. It didn't
Right.
count. And that's, I think, a big part of the problem.
Yes.
Okay. Can I go to the next point?
Yes.
One more thing.
One
I
more
would
thing.
just say that this whole issue, it is made more complicated because, yes, of the power of the two-party system
Correct.
to use this issue to pull women in
Yes.
as voters.
Yes.
yes.
We want to
To make-
polarize it.
To make this
Yeah.
issue so extreme that we can't talk about it and that we can't find a reasonable, solution.
That's our topic.
Right.
We can't have a conversation.
We can't do that. So because let's face it, a political party, they would be giving up power. They
Yep.
wouldn't be able to pull in as many votes.
Yep.
I mean, you could go on and on. That's a big part of the problem.
Okay. Next thing that you said about Stevie Nicks was when she was talking about all of the things that she was proud of, her rings and all
Yeah.
of those things. It's interesting to me, and this is something that like you really have to put your thinking hat on for a second. She was free from all of the cares of the world. She never had to want for anything because she had all the money she could ever want. So she has no need for a God who would provide those things for her, right? And so she has basically, and I'm not saying Stevie Nicks worships the devil, but sold her soul to the devil for that career by being willing to have an abortion, be willing to worship the jewelry and the
Well,
physical
and-
things of life.
And it sounds like she is aware that she's an idol.
Yes.
Like
Oh,
she
yeah.
has become aware of
Yes.
her own idleness.
Correct.
To the point of like, yeah, I mean, I know people follow me because
And why are there no repercussions for her lifestyle?
Yeah.
Because she serves the one who would be chasing after her. If she's serving the enemy, God, he is not vengeful in the New Testament. He's not vengeful like he used to be. He's a perfect gentleman waiting on her.
Mhm.
Yep.
He is saying that
And
at some point in your life,
And that's another topic I think we need to discuss because I think a lot of people still think
we got to start writing these down, y'all.
they think like, oh well,
Got the pen.
they're like, have you read the Old Testament? Like
I've run out
talk
of
about trauma,
place.
talk about PTSD. I remember. Well, you clearly don't.
You haven't read the whole
realize-
story. You
Yes.
haven't read the whole story.
Yes.
yeah.
The purpose of the
Free.
Gospels
Yeah.
becomes a whole nother,
Yeah.
a whole nother beginning.
It's like a before and after.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say that any of these women who have that, that strong women's rights mindset are not Christians.
No,
But if they are, they're not expressing it.
listen.
That's my problem.
Here's my
Yeah, yeah,
here's
yeah.
my wife's take on the world. Now we're what Sid would call homesteaders. So we like to grow our own veggies and things like that. We homeschool. So we try to try to be as self-sufficient as we humanly can. Now
Yeah.
we are not milking a goat or a cow to get milk. Like
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
no, we aren't going to do that because that's not going to work for me. I'm not a farmer by any stretch of the imagination. But my wife said to me, she's like, hey, listen, all of these women this is paraphrased. This is how I took it. So don't anybody yell at my wife for this. Was like, she's like, hey, women's liberation and all of those things are wonderful. She's like, but I want to be a wife. I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to be, and I don't want to say a servant to me, but she wants to be the helpmeet rather than the leader, right? She wants to serve alongside me, not
That's
lead.
perfectly fine.
Yes.
That's a healthy marriage
Yeah,
when you can
exactly.
say that.
Right.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to be like, well, you can't tell me that I have to have my two. You can't. My wife has never been like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are times that my wife will say to me, hey, I need you to trust me on this. I need you to let me take the lead. And if my wife says that phrase to me, I'm like, all right, you got it. And I might not like it, but there's obviously, it's a passion for her. And there's something about it that she needs to be able to take care of.
Right.
And so I allow her to do that. But that's not me being necessarily being submissive to my wife. That is my trusting my wife's anointing. That is my trusting my wife's calling. And there's a huge difference in that. She trusts mine every day. The least I can do is say, okay, God has spoken and I'm going to trust her.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So she will never have repercussions until she gets to the end of her life. And then those repercussions are permanent and that's going to suck.
Right.
I'm not saying Stevie Nicks is going to hell, but it sounds to me like she's going to hell. Okay.
Anyway.
So just like the becoming a cult thing, like she's aware of her own
Yes.
ideology, I guess,
Status,
is,
yeah.
her own
Yeah,
what she is a people worshiping her. Okay,
When you say I believe in the Church of Stevie,
yeah, there's a problem.
that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's pretty,
Okay, so
Yeah.
I believe that every movement begins with genuine intentions, right? I think and I don't care if it's Black Lives Matter. I don't care if it's what was the one that wore the hats that looked like vaginas?
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Whatever that was. You guys remember that? Like there was a
Yeah.
spell of that was happening
Yeah.
for a little.
Oh.
Roger's face is like, what is
I must have
happening?
missed that.
You missed it?
We missed
that
it.
What?
either.
Yeah.
What? Okay, so it was a whole thing. There are a lot of those movements that I believe start in genuine, like, we feel like we need to have our voice heard, right? I think that's perfectly okay. Here's what I think is interesting, though. Think back to Occupy Wall Street. You guys remember that movement?
Yeah.
It was like, and basically, I don't want to say it was a conspiracy theory, but it was basically a bunch of people who believed one very important thing, and that was it. What's interesting is that movement lasted for a long time until they started quoting scripture. And then what happened is they started like getting real close to rubbing up against religion.
Mm-hmm.
And those people who didn't believe in religion bailed.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movement died. So they were supporting something that was faith-based, quote unquote, until they realized
What they were
it was faith-based.
Mm-hmm.
And then they bail. Because what happens is we can all go along for the ride. Listen, there are lots of times that I listen to, Stephen Furtick or whomever. And a lot of times I'm like, yeah, that's a great message. Yeah, that's a great message. Yeah, that's a great message. And all of a sudden they say something and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm pulling back now, right?
Right.
So when we start to rub up against things we have stronger opinions about, or we rub up against things that we have stronger disagreements about,
Yes.
we'll bail from whatever it is that we've supported for so long. And so what's happened is that women for so long have supported the idea of being housewives and, being submissive to their husbands, all of those things. And then all of a sudden you get a couple of bad guys. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to dismiss domestic violence or things like that. But you have some guys who do some dumb stuff. All of a sudden, all of the women are like, well, I would never stand for that if my husband ever, and their husband has never. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And so now all of the sudden they've bailed from this like stereotypical 50s housewife mindset to I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to be independent. I'm going to do all of these things. There's nothing wrong with that. So long as you stay grounded in your true beliefs and not become wrapped up in some cult-like behavior,
Yeah.
which is what tends to happen. Okay. So there was that.
Oh, you mentioned something about basically like almost doing your homework.
Yes.
Are there any Browns fans?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
I don't know if you would know. So the training camp, what city is that, or suburb of Cleveland? It starts with a B.
Brook Park?
Brook Park.
Oh, no, it's
No,
Berea.
Berea.
It's
Berea.
Berea. Yeah.
I'm
I'm not even a Browns fan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's Berea.
Sunday night, I was going to fill up our water, and I was coming back, and there was a message. I think it was 99.9, but he was saying that it was like a Middle Eastern city, and I can't remember what book in the Bible that it was, but they were called, what is it again?
Berea.
Bereans or
Mhm.
Bereans.
Berean.
Bereans, because they would always listen to the, lecture and then like basically go home and do their homework.
Mhm.
So there's now like a word for it.
Yeah.
We can be Bereans.
We can be Bereans.
Yeah, and we should be Bereans.
Yes.
So sorry.
Yes.
Michael, you just killed me. You never were a football fan.
All of a sudden, well, here's what happens.
And you picked the Browns.
Here, no. Okay. So now I feel like I've got to defend myself. Like, this isn't fair.
There you go.
I am not a fan of any one team. I have come to enjoy the sport.
Mhm.
I don't know football well enough to pick somebody. Here's what I enjoy about the sport. This like I always say I don't like kids, right? Like I don't even like my own kids. That's what I tell everybody.
Well, I wasn't gonna say they'll break your heart, kid.
Well, that's a fact. But that's a lie because the only reason I've ever been the only reason I've become connected to football is because Easton loves it so much. Same with soccer. Soccer to me is like watching paint dry. But you go to a soccer game that my kid is playing, loudest parent on the field.
Mm-hmm.
I am screaming. I am yelling. I know all the boys. Last year, we took them all to ice cream at one of the games because they won the game. I mean, it was an amazing upset. They were losing big time, and they came back and whooped those kids. I was like, let's go.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to take your cowbell.
No, I do take my cowbell again.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't care anymore.
Get your cowbell taken away from you?
Well, they had a thing called Silent Sunday,
Yeah.
which I believe was aimed at me because... I mean, I'm out there with that cowbell, ringing it, screaming at the kids up and down all over the place, and everybody's like, "This dude
Got a silence.
has freaking
Yeah.
lost it."
My grandma had a legit cowbell because can buy them at
Yeah.
the games
yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
But compared to this cowbell from the farm, oh my god,
You should see mine.
thing rang
Mine's a
your-
long-handled,
All the-
Oh.
big red cowbell, man, and I get that thing going. You hear it across town. But, so fun story about that. So talking about football, having not ever been a fan, Easton played flag football at Armor Sports at New Point Church. He was on the Colts. Never won a game. Never won. I think they may have scored 5 touchdowns the entire season. It was bad. But these are all brand new kids who have never played. And all of the teams are made up of kids who have played before. Many of them have played together in other leagues.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that it works is you can say, hey, I want my kid on a team with this kid, this kid, this kid, this kid, this kid. So then they build like the Miami Dolphins is a bunch of kids that have all played together. That seems unfair, right? Like my kid
Right.
doesn't even know like how to snap a ball. Like seriously, our kids would snap the ball and it
And
would
you
hit
probably pay the same price too.
Yeah.
Politics.
They would snap the ball, it would hit the ground, and then it would be dead, and we've lost it down. Anyhow, I promised Easton if he helped score a touchdown, because he was QB a lot. If you help score a touchdown or you score a touchdown yourself, I will ring the cowbell at the final game. Sure enough, they got a touchdown. And man, I lit that cowbell up. Everybody, because you're not allowed there. Everybody's giving me dirty looks, and Easton turns around and he goes, he was so amped to get to have the cowbell run.
Oh.
And that's why I like football now. I couldn't tell you, like, I get the game, I understand the penalties, I get all of it, but I don't have a favorite team because I just enjoy watching it.
And you can connect with them.
Right.
Yeah.
So the other night we watched the Chiefs game as a family because we all like to watch Mahomes and all of his craziness. We almost always watch the Browns game if it's on, like if we can find it on a channel.
Not me this year.
And again, it's not because we like the Browns, but they're a
Yeah.
hometown team, so
Right.
it's worth it.
Right.
We like to watch the Vikings. We like to watch the Bengals. That's kind of like but we'll watch anything. Thursday night, whatever's on, we're going to watch it.
I think when you moved to Janate, you're a little bit closer to Pittsburgh than you are Cleveland.
Well, I don't think that you could ever do that. It's my grandpa bred into me as a kid not liking sports that Pittsburgh is for the devil. Okay. The other one that I had was you said something about when women can start to reason about how this is a godly decision on whatever. Here's the problem that I would have with that statement. God does not negotiate.
Right.
So when they go to him and petition and say, well, God, I think you should just, or I think you should just, he doesn't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's not how that works. So you could come to me with whatever you want to come to me with. Like, hey, I was reading a passage of scripture that said, and I would look at you and go, okay, but did you read the one before it? Did you read the one after it? Because what you're trying to tell me doesn't have the context behind it. And so he's not going to negotiate with them. He's not going to tell you what's wrong is right and what's right is wrong. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. That's how it is at the end of the day. And I don't care if you love or support somebody who's gone through those things. That's none of my business. Like, that's not my place. But at the end of the day, we have to realize that as Christians, we have to call wrong wrong and right. So when somebody comes up to you and says, well, I was reading the book of Acts and I believe that Paul said, I want to look at you and I'm going to go, you're right. Paul did say that. But when you read the whole passage or the whole book or the whole whatever, you realize that that's not what Paul was saying at all.
Yeah.
And I would argue about that with women in ministry. They talk about, which book is it? It's in Corinthians, that Paul tells the church of Corinthians, he tells the ladies, you need to sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
Stay behind the veil. Don't talk. You can't, I don't want to hear you. You need to behave yourselves. But when you actually understand the context of that, and this is what our beliefs are founded on in Foursquare, because our denomination was founded on a woman preaching. Amy Semple McPherson, Sister Amy, was like she's the founder of the Foursquare Gospel Church. What I believe Paul was saying, so what was happening is the men were sitting in front of the veil. So they were at the front of the church and they were learning. They were being learned. The women were sitting at the back, but they were more hungry than the men were.
Yeah.
They were desperate to understand what that preacher was saying and what
That's why Paul wrote it.
And so they're pressing into the veil, and they're like, honey, when he said this, does he mean that?
Yeah.
Wait a second. I need to understand this. And they are eager. They're hungry for the word. And Paul's like, listen, we get it. We know you're hungry, but we need you to not interrupt the church service. Right? Because we need to be able to get the word out. Otherwise, nobody's going to hear it. You have to sit down and listen. Take your notes. Go home and ask your husband. I believe that's what he was saying to them. He wasn't telling them to sit down, shut up, and don't learn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
correct.
Well, the argument that everybody is going to make is, no, he's telling women they can't be pastors. But you've got to understand the context of the time and of the situation and what was happening in the church. I'm no biblical scholar, but it's pretty clear to me that they're absolutely, if God does not recognize gender or race or any of those things, then if there's a female pastor, God's not looking at them as male or female.
That's right.
He's not looking at them as neither Gentile nor Jew, right? In my opinion, if that's the case, then as a Gentile, I should not be preaching the gospel. And then everybody's like, whoa, wait a second. Yeah, I know. I like to say offensive things. I like to say stuff that gets people stirred up because guess what? Sometimes that's what the word of God does.
That's right.
It shakes us up. Okay, that's all my
Well, hold on. So you with the whole thing you just said, and you being familiar with the Amish community, and I was listening to a podcast, and I don't remember, it was a fairly, I don't know if you would know, I think it was in Pennsylvania, but it was a court case, and I mean, it was between her dad, basically this Amish lady had gotten molested from her dad, her two brothers, her uncle.
Holy smokes.
Just the one brother alone, over 200 times.
Oh my gosh.
From I think the time she was 4 to 16 is when she finally spoke on it. But with that being said, that kind of tied in with, oh, well, you're never allowed. It was hush hush because that's how the Amish people are.
They deal with their problems internally.
But, what if she were to get pregnant,
Well,
Are we going to...
Truth be told, and again, don't want to speak for all Amish people everywhere, but that's why you see a lot of birth defects in Amish people.
Well...
That's pretty common.
Yeah.
And it's not like it happens to all of them. But I would tell you, a lot of the people that I know who are no longer Amish will tell you that they've had that experience.
Yeah, and because it's mostly hush hush,
Yes.
and then if people do find out about it, they have to. I think it's 6 weeks that they basically don't talk to anyone. They're being shunned temporarily.
Yeah.
But then they can return to the community, quote unquote, and start attending the services. And Wednesday night, or I don't even know if they do a midweek, but Sunday, but basically people just act like it never happened.
Yep.
So they do this whole court case file, and then the 17-year-old or 16, I don't know how old she was. Well, I don't want you to punish my brother. So then she didn't even follow through with it.
Yep. Yeah. So I talked a couple of weeks ago about the Amish girl who, so the family got a letter from her and she basically said, hey, I'm not planning to come home anytime soon. I am not going to be Amish whenever I do come home. And she's not planning to come home to them at all, but she's not going to be Amish. And it's very obvious that this is like a kind of like a brainwashing situation that's happening. However, the first thing that came into my mind, is that a possibility? Did she have that experience that everybody, do you know what I mean? Like that was my initial thought was like, is this an experience that she's had? And I hate to say that because I know her dad and her dad's a wonderful man. And I don't think that he would, I don't believe that at all.
Right.
But you have to ask that question because the trauma that came with that. Like, there's got to be something
There
attached
again,
to
my
it.
mom grew up in that lifestyle. Her dad abused her from the time she was 5
Yeah.
until she was about 14.
Mm-hmm.
He was the police officer of the town.
Mhm.
Had a barber shop. They went to church
Yeah.
every Saturday. They were Seventh-day Adventist. Nobody would have ever thought that
Right.
of them.
Yes, exactly. I have to tell you, this is a weird thing for me. So maybe we're not all like this. I don't know. But I won't bathe my daughter and I won't help her get dressed. She's not allowed to come in the bathroom when I'm in there. Like, to me, she's at an age now. Like, when she was a baby, it was a lot
Yeah,
different.
right.
But she's at an age now, and I know that she's like,
How old is she right now again?
she's 6.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like,
that was about the time. And my dad, I mean, Cindy was in and out of our life
Mhm.
periodically, but I mean, that was about the time where my dad would make sure I knew what
Yep.
I had to do properly
yes,
and could help Shy because he was like, yeah.
there comes a point.
Yeah.
And so, like, when she goes into her room to get dressed, she doesn't like to shut her bedroom door. And I'm like, Sissy, you got to shut your bedroom door. Nobody's allowed to see you naked.
Mhm.
And like, we go through the, like, if anybody touches you, yada, yada, yada. And here's the worst part. The worst part for me is that every time she goes somewhere for a day,
Mhm.
like spends an afternoon with somebody or whatever, when she comes home, we always ask her, do you have any secrets to tell us?
Mhm.
Because we never ask her, did somebody touch you? Do you have any? Because a lot of times they'll say,
Because
now this
people
is a
say,
secret.
Yeah. We can't
This is-
tell anyone.
And we do it like a joke. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, do you have any secrets? And
Yeah.
like, you can tell, like, if a kid's like, oh, like, yes, I've got a secret or whatever. And even if they don't tell you, you know that something has happened.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, we are like wicked intentional about it because it almost always happens to little girls. Very seldom happen. I shouldn't say seldom, but it doesn't happen to boys as often.
Mhm.
But my point to all of that is like, there comes a point in life when we have to do what's right versus what's easy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge for us as Christians, when we're trying to have these real conversations, God's not going to negotiate with us when we get to the end of our lives, when we're standing at the judgment seat. He's not going to go, you know what? You were okay. You were passable.
Mhm.
So I'm going to let you in. No, it's you. Well done, my good and faithful servant, or depart from me, I never knew you. Those are your options. There's no
Yes.
in between.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a second chance whenever you do that.
It's a yay or nay.
Yes, right. And I don't think that we can convey that properly to the world
Mhm.
because we can't have a conversation with them. Because when I say, hey, Jesus loves you, and somebody says, F your Jesus,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah.
not an uncommon
No.
statement,
No, it is
No.
not.
Mm-mm.
like keep your religion to yourself. No, I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
But I also look at it like this. If I want to be able to share my religion with people, if I want to be able to share my Jesus with people, then sometimes when somebody tells me about Allah or Buddha or whatever, sometimes I just have to listen.
Right. But
And I want to say, you know what? I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
But let me just tell you.
Yeah.
Jesus, out of all of these, is the only one that every one of those religions identifies with.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like, he is in all of them.
Mhm.
Let's think about that for a second. You know what I mean? Like, you have to find a way to have a constructive conversation and not just, and I always, on Sunday mornings when I yell at you guys and hold up my Bible and I'm like, if you're weaponizing the word of God, you're doing it wrong. Like, that's not how we evangelize. It's not how we bring people to Christ.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
And Jesus permitted in Peter to deny him 3 times. He's not going to permit us that.
no.
Mm-mm.
And he
You know,
permitted
you
that.
can't. Yeah.
He permitted that to Peter because Peter had been so, for the entire duration when they were in the garden, and he cuts off the guard's ear and no, you can't wash my feet. I don't want you to wash my whole body now. Like, this whole, like, Peter was so wishy-washy. That was that, like, I'm going to be gentle. I'm not going to force myself on you. Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And at that third time, there's revelation knowledge for Peter. And Peter's like, holy smokes, I can't believe I've done this.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was right. That was that, like, aha moment that we each get in our own way.
Well, and it was
Mhm.
to like fulfill the prophecy.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
he's not going to do it with us because
Right.
sorry, but
Done.
like
Done.
we're not.
Yeah, I think the thing, one of the things we have to stop doing as a church, this is my opinion, and it's not, again, not a popular one. We have to stop scaring people with end times.
Yeah.
Like, it's coming. We know that. We are closer today than we were yesterday.
Yeah.
But when we start telling people, well, Jesus could come tomorrow. You're right, he could. But how scary is that for somebody? It's not like, okay, I got to get my crap together in less than 24 hours.
Right. Right.
Like, listen, hell is real, but so is heaven.
That's right.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, today is the best day for salvation. Yesterday was great. Tomorrow will be fine so long as we're still alive. But today is the best day because it is here, now,
Yes.
in the present, in front of us. Let's take the opportunity.
Yeah, the Lord has given you a life to live.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, don't worry about the end of time.
Right.
Worry
Yeah.
about right now.
And there are
Yes,
people
there's people like that.
there are people who are constantly prepping for the end time. They're like, I know Jesus is coming back on January 17th of 2028, and I just know, but they're over there canning stuff to put in their
Doomsday
bunker.
Preppers. Yeah. But yeah.
If you know Jesus is coming back, why are you prepping anything? Because it
Right.
doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to, like, I'm not hoping to be left behind.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a lot to say that we have to do better at conversation.
Yeah.
We can't always be right. We have to always be learning.
Well, and like you said,
Exactly.
like if someone's telling you, "Oh, it's going to be this day, you better get your life together," they don't even think about what about this Jesus, like,
Right.
If you,
Well, you're a fearmonger then.
yeah, if you gently,
Yeah.
approach it and just,
Well,
Plant
but
the
like I
seeds every
said, I
now.
mean, we're reaching a point where people have to make the decision.
Mhm.
oh yeah,
Is this going to continue to be a Christian nation?
Yep.
mm-hmm.
Or are we're going to exchange that for this idea of kindness?
Yeah,
Like,
that doesn't
we
work.
could- well, like we could take all these principles that yes, Jesus stands for, but we're gonna rewrite it so that everybody can fit in,
Mm-hmm.
whether they believe in Christ or not, because it's just important to be kind to everybody.
No.
Which it is, but that doesn't come
But
from
that's not-
us.
Mm-hmm.
That comes from the Lord.
That comes from the Lord.
Right.
Yep.
The greatest commandment is to love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just greatest commandment. That's what Jesus tells us. However, let's get past the crucifixion of Jesus. I talked about this a little bit on Sunday. 50% of the New Testament is written by Paul,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 50% of it is written by Paul, and Paul only talks about the crucifixion, the death, and the resurrection. That's all he talks about. The importance is less like Jesus's teachings are important. I don't want to
Yeah.
I don't want to overshadow that.
Yeah.
But we've got to stop thinking about all of the things that just all the words that were just said and start saying, okay, salvation is real.
Uh-huh.
Heaven is real. Hell is real. Death is going to come for me at some point in my life.
That's right.
And I have to be confident in where I'm going.
Mhm.
I have to be confident in the relationship that I have, the words that I stand on, what I believe. And I have to be willing to say that if I get to heaven and everything that I believe is wrong and I get sent to the pits of hell, I don't know what else to do. I've done everything that I could possibly do. I can't just be nice to people every day.
Mm-mm.
No.
If I'm nice to you, if I do everything that you ask me to do, I become a doormat, right?
Right.
Yes.
I loaned you money. I picked you up for work. I did this. I did that. I can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, you are accountable, and you are accountable in all areas of your life. You are accountable in your finances. You are accountable in your relationships. Like if you're coming to church and you're not tithing, this is not a tithing message, but I always feel like I need to clarify this. It's part of what God expects of us.
That's right.
Like it's not optional. And so if you're coming to church and you're like, well, I come and I get fed through worship and, pastor always comes and visits me and I always get to do this or that. And, the church supports me in this way and in that way. And they give me this and they give me that. And you're not tithing, shame on you.
That's right.
Because it's not about you. It's about the bigger picture. And when we're trying to love on people, we need to be able to support that
Mhm.
internally.
Yeah.
One of the things that with the food pantry, I just created a webpage that's off of our church webpage. And one of the things that I noted was that this is a congregationally supported emergency food system. Now, it's a lot of words, right?
Mhm.
This body alone supports that food pantry.
Exactly.
Why is that important? Because people need to understand that it's not free. Life it's not handed to you. There is a cost to somebody for something. And at the end of the day, greatest cost on the cross, all of the blood.
That's right.
That was the greatest cost. And if you can't wrap your head around that and believe that and be genuinely in awe of that,
Mhm.
I don't know what to tell you. The conversation ceases because I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to weaponize the word of God. I'm not going to tell you
Right.
that you're stupid or you're fat or you're ugly or because that's what we do. We call names.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm not going to do that with you. I'm going to tell you that, hey, it's okay if you don't believe it, but let me tell you, I believe it with my whole heart. And I know that when I die, I'm going to the promised land.
Mhm.
I'm going to have everlasting life. I hope you find that same peace. That's it.
And I can compare Stevie Nicks to the ancient Egyptians. What did they do when they were buried? They buried all their valuables with them, everything,
Yeah.
stuffed them into those tombs,
Yep.
buried with all their precious jewelry, all that stuff. and it made them kings, it made them queens, it made them idols.
Yep. But what do they have
And
to
it's
show?
really
for it?
cool history. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what happened to a lot of that stuff? Grave robbers come
Yeah.
in and take it all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You got people just,
Mm-hmm.
The value is there. It's worth.
there's
It's
value
worth.
on earth.
It's worth earthly money.
Yeah.
It's worth
But
earthly
what-
gains.
And
but-
they say, they carry all that with them into the next life. Well, I don't know,
The word
but-
tells us that everything you build up on earth is
yeah,
left
So,
here, and that's all that you'll ever gain. You won't gain heavenly rewards.
all the rings, all the boots,
Yep.
all the,
Yep. You can have as many Michael Kors purses as you want put in your
And-
casket.
and I'm
They
not
ain't going with you.
saying- And I'm not saying she hasn't ever, had a positive influence on somebody or people, but for her own self, her own
Mhm.
salvation, it's like you see where her head's at, and you just are like, it's disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
It's very disappointing that somebody with that much influence that probably could bring a lot of people to
Mhm.
Christ because of her influence chooses not to completely do something else. And and we can talk about Elvis. Like, how many stories is there of him? Somebody saying, "Hey, I really like your shirt," and he would take
it off
shirt
his
right
back.
off his back and give it to him.
Yeah.
But the most profound Elvis story that you can tell, and I'm not telling this just because I'm an Elvis fan, obviously, the most profound Elvis story that you can ever tell is he was often referred to as the king.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
he would tell people, he would stop them and say,
Yeah.
there's only one king, that was
Yeah.
Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah,
He-
for all his
mm,
success.
yes.
He
Yep.
was,
Never took that as a compliment.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Well, like you said, and I think it was Charlie Kirk that was saying it's a sad fact that most likely only 1 in 4 Christians will vote in this next
Yeah.
election because we'd rather stay passive.
Yep. Well, and here's the thing. You don't have to share your opinion.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Exactly.
I can
Yeah,
walk into the poll.
exactly.
I can vote how I vote.
Uh-huh.
Vote my conscience. I don't vote party. I vote policy.
Yeah.
I vote what I feel is right in my heart. I feel like
Yeah.
Amen.
this aligns with the word of God. That they,
Amen.
and listen, there are some things I support, some things I don't support.
Right.
Sometimes there's a levy that pops up that everybody's like, oh, that's a school levy. You have to support it. You know what? I don't have to
Right.
because I'm watching what they're doing with my finances and they're just setting it on fire.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to support everything that you support. Yes, I want my kids to have the best education, but that's why I don't send them to public
That's
school.
what I was just going to say. That's why they're not
It's
in
why I brought them
public
back home
school.
because we know what you can get in public
That's
school.
a whole other topic of this
Yeah.
conversation,
Right.
getting
Yeah.
into public school,
Yep.
where that's headed and where the ideals are going. And
Mm-hmm.
like, we could sit here and talk about that for another hour.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's button up for tonight. That's a little over an hour. I think that was a really good
Mhm.
conversation.
Mhm.
So got a little heated for a second. Sorry about that. Sometimes I do that. I'll tell you what, Dawn, have you prayed lately?
I have not.
Okay, we'll let you pray
I
tonight.
forgot 1 week to even show up.
That
Forget.
happens
Warned
to the
us.
best of
Had
us.
to work.
Happens to the best of us.
Dear precious Heavenly Father, we come to you, Lord God, thanking you that you give us this opportunity and this platform that we can reach people who otherwise might not hear about you or about your goodness, Lord. Help us to believe with our faith, Lord, that as we pray, that you're going to answer those prayers.
Yes.
Amen.
Help us to walk by faith and not by sight, Lord Jesus. I pray.
Hey friends, Pastor Michael again. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you should consider joining us on Sunday mornings. Our address is 1943 North Water Street Extension in Yorksville. We'd love to have you join us for an in-person service.